Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Viewers, comments and questions live. Dan here.
Mick here, hello. It would be better if we plugged in, but for various technical reasons, we don't do that. Welcome to VCQ on this fine Monday. It's lovely. Right.
Ah, 13 here.
Second chord is that. Sorry, third chord.
Ah. Okay. Nice. Very good. Very good. It's like a sus.
It's important business.
Yeah. Stop getting it wrong, Daniel.
Important business. Well, I had to Google it for Friday's show. Thank you for all your kind words and comments on Friday's show. You really enjoyed the funk show. We enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah.
For once, we did impart some information. Coming up. Rosie's here. Rosie's in the house. Spanieling to the max. Are you going to sit, Rosie, or are you going to stand uncomfortably with your anus against my chest?
Maybe we should get Rosie to do work on some magic tricks.
Yeah.
For our shorts.
For our shorts, yeah. For those of you who are new, welcome. We do this every Monday. We take questions and answer them. We prioritise super chats. And for those of you who aren't new, welcome back. Thanks very much for being here with us. You can probably hear me patting the dog quite loud with all the microphone compression. Because the dog is made of muscle, isn't it? Hello.
Frankie Holt says a tone hound.
Yes, tone hound, that pedal dog. Espanol. If we ever got a boy, I would call it Daniel.
Daniel the Spaniel. Brilliant.
I guess it wouldn't have been much of an insult at school, would it?
No. There were worse insults than,
Yeah, that's
than
what
being
I
called
mean.
a
Yeah,
spaniel.
yeah. FA Cup I used to get because I had big ears. Prince Charles.
Ah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, there you go. Right, Rosie, you need to foxtrot Oscar, I'm afraid. Sorry for mentioning. Very much, as always, to BV for moderating and being across all of that stuff. We greatly appreciate it, BV. Thank you very
Indeed.
much. Let's see how we're
Christopher
doing.
Clement says, visiting family in California. I live in New Zealand, so it's nice to watch live. Oh, lovely.
Yeah, we'll turn the super chats off. We've got a lot, so we'll turn them off now, in order that we can get through them all, and make sure everyone gets answered
Indeed.
with the requisite fullness.
James Bless says, hello from Glasgow. Glasgow,
Hello, James.
you funksters.
My favourite comment of the whole weekend was something like average white band, quite.
Yeah, that was very funny.
Yeah, good. So roll call then. Who's on tonight? I wonder, Daniel.
We've got Cornerstone is on. Interesting.
Oh, hello,
Hello.
Emilio. Andy Dobbs is on. Hello, Andy.
George Skelly. G'day, mate. And Alex Garnett.
Wastel 10 or Wastel 10 is on.
Where's Chilton?
Curtis
G'day, mate.
R.
Lovely.
Craig Dubler.
Rob Brewer. Michael Keith.
That is the best spelling of Dubler I've ever seen. Deubler. It's like Doubler, but way more exotic.
Very good.
Dubler. Kevin Steinmetz is on.
Rob Brewer says, hey, Funk Soul Brothers.
That'd be the day. Whit Anderson on. Woo!
G'day, mate.
Ranzer is on.
John Channing and Chris Johnson. Greetings from New Brunswick, Canada. Canada. John Channing says, hello from a gloriously sunny London. So I was in London on Friday and it was absolutely delightful. Had afternoon tea on Portobello Road. I say afternoon tea, it was a kebab, but it was really nice.
That's great. What kind of kebab?
Like a lamb sheesh thing.
Yeah.
It was like a proper restaurant.
I am a fan of the kebab.
It was
I have
very
to say. Good. In which case, let us gallop headlong into the super chats. Actually, band meeting.
Band meeting. Present.
Band meeting. to all our patrons on Patreon, thank you kindly for being a patron and supporting us in that way. This month's giveaway is going to be 4 JHS 3 Series pedals with great thanks to JHS. There is, Daniel,
We have a distortion. We have a delay. We have an overdrive. And we have
a chorus.
a chorus.
But they all look like this. White with the 3 knobs. And that'll be, so we'll do 4 winners, 1 to each. So there's a 4 times chance of being triumphant in this month's giveaway. Rosie, don't go behind there. No, come on.
Good girl.
She always pulls cables out. Let's just make sure we're still on air.
Rosie, don't go behind.
Yes, please don't go behind there, Rosie. So, yeah, if you are a current patron, look out in your inbox, check your spam folder for the email that will go out
I need the pedals.
to enable you to enter that, with big thanks to our patrons. Also, if you're a bit hot like I am, hot.
Good girl.
We do have some really nice Chili's water bottles in the store that match my shoes.
We have a limited number of them,
Yeah.
but they're awesome.
There's a whole bunch of black ones as well. Anyway, merch. Let's push the merch down. It helps. Cool. In which case, let us gallop to the super chats. You got anything you want to ask, Rosie? Apart from the obvious? No. Okay.
No. She's all good.
Yeah. Why are you as you are? Is she saying?
She just is.
There's no food or any sort of play item coming my way, therefore you are dead to me. Andy Dobbs, hello Andy.
Hey, Andy.
Is first in this week. He says, "Hi guys, I was given a 40-watt trainer, not this kind of trainer, TRAYNOR trainer.
They're fantastic amps.
Tube amp. There's killer. It's from Canada. Have you heard anything of it? It's very well known there."
Yes. Trainer amps are great. Trainer, there's some footage in the 60s of the Stones using Trainer amps.
Right.
And it's footage of sound check, and they sound flippin' awesome. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yeah, I think I had one for about 5 minutes.
Right.
Because they weren't massively available in the UK. Were they available in Australia?
No. I only found out about them when I got over here.
Yeah, as you say, very popular in Canada. VC maybe was the model designation. VC40.
VC40. Yeah, that was the ones.
Rings a bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, haven't seen one in years. I mean, I'm sure they're kicking around, but haven't seen one in years. But yeah. I can't even remember what it sounded like. It sounded like loud and clean, like a Fender to me, but that I could be misled.
Yeah, they're great.
They're
great, Rosie.
Wastel 10. Hi, Toes. I saw a 7-year-old video on EQ of you last week, and I've got to say you look much younger back then.
The years have been brutal.
Yes, timeless content, though. Is that Marshall clone still around? It sounded great. Yeah, Dan's, what's it called?
The Mallard.
Yes, I was going to say it has an avian type
Yes,
name.
it does. It does. Yeah, no, I've still got it. It's great. I've got a Duff rectifier valve in it at the moment, so I need to swap that out, but it keeps flashing over. But yeah, so when Marshall did, there's an 18-watt and a 20-watt version. 18-watt had the valve rectifier in, 20-watt had the solid-state rectifier.
Yeah, you'll know that their model designations are 1974X for the combo and 2061. I don't know if it needs the X. I don't know what that means. It might mean reissue. And 2061 was the 20-watt head.
It's excellent.
Yeah. Didn't the 74 have tremolo in it as well?
Yes.
And does yours have tremolo?
Yes.
It does. Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's a really superb sounding thing. Yeah.
Nice. Yes, we did look younger 7 years ago, but that is a sort of fact of life, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Dan went grey, and I was researching this on YouTube last week.
I sneezed and went grey.
3 months you were. It was 3 months from your beard being a sort of dark darker colour to being grey. Literally 3 months it happened.
Yep.
Yeah. Over dear old Koval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's like, stress just rolls right off my back, straight into my face.
It's okay though. We have to renegotiate our relationship with age, I'm afraid. Because it is so often used as a pejorative statement to say you look older and a negative thing. And it's like, what the hell's wrong with being older?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, young things look brilliant, but you're so much less of an arsehole when you're older.
I don't know.
I am
I
anyway.
bet some old arseholes at my time.
Maybe there's a golden period.
Between 37 and 37 and a half. It's like the 6 months.
Sorry, maybe
well,
it's just me. Maybe there's plenty of young people who are much better than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, respect your elders. They know a lot of stuff. We just don't give them the chance to say it quite often because we assume that they're frail and can't walk.
Yeah.
That was a bit serious, wasn't it?
My grandparents on my father's side both lived to be 100.
Wow.
And my nan, Nan was 100 and she was sharp as a tack.
Really?
Yeah. She's an amazing
Did you stick
woman.
her in things?
Yeah. Where's Nan? She's on the cork board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Holding up next week's binge schedule. Yeah. G. Barge says, "What's wrong? I can't remember." Yeah, right. Yeah.
Victor Gustafsson says, "What the hell is wrong with being older?" said the 60s telly to the 50s. Very good.
Nice.
Very good.
The feel button says, "Grey hair means people don't ask me to help spread yard material anymore." Yeah, there is that. There is that. Pete Hawthorne says, "Hi DNM, greetings from Uppsala, Sweden." Or Uppsala, I'm not sure which. He says, "Am I the only guy in the world who likes glossed painted necks? I've picked up a Supro Westbury but cannot get on with the satin neck. How do you like yours?"
This is a really great question / observation. So I'll never forget, I had a Strat Plus, I think they called it. It was had the roller nut, one of those ones.
Shiver. Yeah.
Sorry?
Shiver. Hey, Jeff Beck used something pretty similar.
He did.
And he sounded great.
Yeah. And the bass player, who was like, we were really good mates at the time, and we were both playing with Max, and we were living together in Manly. And he says, "Oh, you know what you should do? You should strip all the varnish off and just tongue oil everything.
Yeah.
It'll sound amazing." And I went, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that." And so, it wasn't an expensive Strat that I had, but I loved it. It felt so good.
So you thought, I know, I'll fundamentally change it.
Yeah, I didn't know. Well, I genuinely had. I thought it could only be good getting rid of, because it was a really super hard polyester on those things. Anyway, the guitar sounded so thuddy and dead after that. I couldn't believe it. Like, I'll never forget playing a chord for the first time, and it just went flare. And there was just, it's incredible how much that will fundamentally change the sound of the guitar.
Yeah, and there's gloss and there's gloss. So, speaking purely personally, the best possible feeling, Rosie, out. Come on, out
Come
there.
on, darling.
The best possible feeling neck for me is a well-worn-in 60s Fender or Gibson, which would have been nitrocellulose or 50s nitrocellulose, and it's gone so hard over the years it's almost become one with the wood. Like new nitrocellulose can be a little bit sticky, depending on. I mean, both Fender and Gibson have been through terrible times with
non-curing nitro.
Yeah. and I think that's about no barking. I think that's about atmospherics, and all kinds of other. All right, you're out of here. Come on in. Let's go. We'll go find Mummy.
Henning says the tongue oil needs almost 4 weeks to dry before you put the next coat on it. Yeah, so Wayne, my mate, had this bass that was made from wood that was hundreds of years old and was tongue oiled. It was an amazing instrument, and but mine was not. Yeah, so there you go. It fundamentally changes the sound of the guitar. One thing that you can try, if you've got a satin neck, is that you can get some, is it 0.0000 steel wool, and just rub the satin back a little bit, and you can sort of polish that up. And a trick that Johnny Kincaid showed me was that you can just use the oil in your hands, which is one of the reasons he was saying that well-worn, well-played guitars have a certain feel, is because you've got oil in your hands, and it just transfers that into the finish.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm with you. So when I bought a custom shop Strat a year or so ago, might be 2 years now, I can't remember. And it's very hard to find custom shop Strats now that don't, relics anyway, that don't have all the finish taken off the back of the neck. And one of the principal reasons I bought this particular one, which is in a gig bag over there somewhere, is because it did have the finish on the neck, and it did have a glossy back of the neck. Yeah. And I quite like it once nitro's gone off. I don't tend to like it on thick polyester or polyurethane. That said, my 70 Strat has a thick polyester finish to the back of the neck.
Yep.
And it feels flipping great.
It feels fantastic.
But then it is 53 years old.
Yeah.
Although, I dare say, no, maybe not. I was going to say it might have had an overspray, but I don't think it has.
But that's not. Are they using the same finish? Because I've played a few 70s poly necks, and they have a thing to them. 70 is not the same as 76 or 77. Right. Okay. It consistently changed. This one would have been nitro originally in 61, but it has had an overspray at some point. Right. But yeah, and that would be it for me. The thing I can't deal with is lacquer on the fingerboard. So like a Rickenbacker often has it, a maple neck Fender, which has, like a vintage type Fender, which has got the lacquer to the front of the fingerboard. And I cannot. So Dan's, if you bought a new one of these, for example, 50s type telly, and you can see it's glossy. If I do that, I don't know if you can see. Just see where the light catches it there. You can see it's glossy. Yep. But again, because it's a relic, this has been worn down enough to make it not quite so hateful. But I can feel my pads and my fingers sticking to that. Wow. Because I got a pretty ham-fisted technique. I'm not a very precise player, and I push down too hard, and too much of my flesh of my fingers is in contact with the actual fingerboard. And it's weird because you don't play sharp. My flesh sticks to the fingerboard. So when you give it a bit of, your fingers start to catch on fire because they're going against the. But some people love it. So it is to the tenor of your question. It's an absolutely personal preference matter. Yeah, sure. So no, you're not the only one in the world. Sorry, that was a massive tangent. End of legs, says Curtis R. Hello, Curtis. In this golden age of gear, my lofty expectations are at times far surpassed. Any tales of holy grails that were somehow even better than you'd hoped? Much love from Kansas City. What a great question. So I had the first ever matchless DC30 with reverb. I had pestered Phil Jamison for years about it, and finally he said, "Okay, I think I've worked out a way to do it. I'll make you one." And he made it and sent it over, and it was really great. The problem I had was I was in a rehearsal, every week with Dave Gregory, who had an old 90s matchless DC30. And, you know, my C30 with reverb sounded great, but next to Dave's old matchless, it just didn't. And they've since changed it, and you know, this was because I had the very first ever one, and they you know, they're wonderful amplifiers. But I remember thinking, will the new matchless, will it do the thing that I want it to do? And it is the best sounding, most glorious, beautiful amplifier. It's just, I love it so much. And you know, remembering what Dave's sounded like and how it felt to play, and I plugged that in, and it's got every bit of that character and charm that the 90s one
Neville
has.
had one, a green one that was it green or was it red? I think it was green. That was just a bonkers good amp.
Yeah.
Something about the combos, I think, do sound a bit different from the heads.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, they're so good. So that was, you know, getting that and plugging it in, it's like, this is it. There's everything I'd hoped it would be and more. So, yeah.
I think it changes over the years. The more you sort of, the more your tastes change and the more things fall into place. And that never stops, you know. Like, I remember being in my sort of late 20s working on guitar magazines thinking I knew everything, and I feel hopelessly naive about that now, because the amount that I now know is vastly more than I did then, and I rather hope it will be in another 20 years. So it's always a bit of a journey, and I think sometimes realizing some of those stepping stones is a really big deal. And perhaps vintage guitars aside, because I'm absolutely with Tom Bookerback on this, vintage guitars are just better than modern guitars. They just are. Sorry. For me, and for Tom, you know, good company.
Yeah.
And he can actually play. And it was vintage amps that I think is the thing that a well-tuned, well looked after, well working vintage amp, just like, oh my God. The sort of stuff that I'd completely ignored for so long because I was into me boogies and modern stuff that was modern boutique and had all the features and bells and whistles. But what they never had was the sound of a cranked 64 Princeton or a deluxe reverb or a late 50s Tweed, you know. And when you hear those things in the flesh, and this is not to say all old stuff, by the way, because a lot of old stuff is just junk. It's been horrifically modified, it hasn't been well maintained, or it needs to have the filter caps changed or the speakers blown or, you know, whatever. But stuff that's well looked after and in good shape, it's just unsurpassable, I think. Which isn't to say you'd want to be carrying it around every day and going out gigging with it, because they are a bit more fragile, or they can be. So it's not saying it's like the ideal choice. It's saying, wow, the experience of playing the thing in the room is, back to your question, it does exceed expectations. So it would be about old stuff for me, having had enough experience to understand what I was listening to.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Alan Twilly. Hello, Alan.
Hey, Alan.
I think, yes, BV has kindly got your chat for us. Alan says, is there a way at home to practice with a tube amp to hear my guitar playing in the mix with a song from my iPad? I'm just curious if you've ever done this and with what gear. Yes.
Yeah. So I've got an ISO cab that I record with at home, and you know, have it come through the monitors, and it's really great. Even a 1 watt tube amplifier has the potential to be loud, but you know, you can turn them down and they can still sound fantastic. Years ago I did a little vlog on what I used to practice at home, and I've got a little valve amp that I've got basically a little speaker, and I've got the Big Trees, which is a 1 watt valve amp from Audio Kitchen. And if I'm practicing at home for something that's, as opposed to just noodling, if I'm working on something, if we've got gigs coming up and I need to work on a part, the difference between practicing on a little valve amplifier or practicing on the digital stuff, which I love practicing on at home. It sounds great. It's so much fun to play because it's so compressed and everything's so easy. But actually putting my board through this little 1 watt valve amplifier and practicing, you get that bit of that fight back, which is so important, and it works brilliantly. So yeah, you can, a little 1 watt thing that you can turn down, and that that works brilliant as well.
Yeah. So your choices are turn your stereo up really loud and play along to it, and then you will be hearing it in some sort of mix. That's not entirely practical at home for the reasons that Dan was just talking about. It's too loud. So then you need to get the signal from your tube amp into whatever device it is you're listening to your music through, and then that can be a number of ways you can do that. The biggest problem, as he says, is sound isolation. So if you've got the tube amp up and it's there, then having headphones on isn't going to help because the amp will be louder than your headphones. You could do it on something like if you had a or DAW, digital audio workstation, like, I don't know, Logic or all the millions of others that exist. And if you're using a computer, you can send your music player on your computer. If it's a Mac, it would be iTunes. If something else might be Spotify or whatever. You can send that into your DAW and assign it to a couple of tracks. You can then mic up your amp and send that into the DAW via your audio interface and listen to the two things. But you've got to get the amp somewhere away.
Yeah.
And then I dare say there are devices that can do it. So things like IK Multimedia make a great range of interfaces that sit between guitar and computer. But you're going to have to be invoking some sort of computer, really, in order to get the sound of the amp into something else that is playing music.
Yeah. And then you've got solutions like aux, the UA aux and the Boss
Wazza headphones.
Yeah, that
but
stuff.
then you can't plug your tube amp into the Wazza headphones.
No, but you've got the Boss one that sat there.
Oh, that thing. Sorry, yeah. Tube amp expander.
The tube amp expander. So that gets you the amplifier into that world.
Yeah.
And with no sound coming out of the amp, you can literally unplug the speaker and so yeah, that's another way to do it. What I like about that, especially for practicing at home, is that you're using the amplifier that you would use at the gig. So you're getting, obviously it's a different experience and you don't have that interaction, but at least you're plugged into that, getting sonically in the ballpark.
Yeah, it is tough. It's quite a big ask, that.
You know what? A big stereo, deluxe reverb.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Wes Chilton says he does it with his UA aux, so he'll come. Universal Audio aux is a thing that's back there somewhere. Is it back there somewhere? Yeah, it's in the middle underneath the pedal show light, and it's an attenuator, but it also connects digitally to your computer, so you can send the sound from your tube amp into that out into your computer or iPad or whatever it is you're going to be listening to your music on. So it is possible. Just seeing if anyone else is coming out with it. Yeah, most of the things that people are suggesting, Henning Hesse says the Palmer 1. Let's see. Radial makes a great box for connecting your guitar to a distant amp, says Eagle Ray Rob. So basically, you're still having to use a computer. As far as we're aware, there's no single device that will do it other than plugging into the aux input on your Yamaha THR-10.
Right.
But then that would be crazy. That would be like strapping your Formula One car to the roof rack of your SUV.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. Which could be more practical if what you want to do is go to the shops. Oh my God. We're going very slow tonight. And the aforementioned Craig Dubler. I love it. I don't know why. Dubler.
Mr. Craig Dubler, Mr. Craig Dubler.
Yeah. Do you say Dubler by name, Dubler by nature?
Dubler.
G'day, gents. Bit of a tangent. What about a show on speaking drummer? As a guitarist, I have no idea how to describe rhythms.
Oh, interesting.
It probably wouldn't take you very long to learn. Listen to some good, simple 4 on the floor drums, or at least 4/4. You know, listen to anything that's got a good beat. Pick out the bass drum, and normally it's 1 and 3 for the bass drum and 2 and 4 for the snare, isn't it? Do ch do ch do ch do ch
Do.
yeah, and then boom ch boom ch boom ch boom ch, and your ch is always your snare or your hand claps or whatever era you're in, and then don't worry about the snare, about the cymbals and hats and stuff. Let the drummer worry about that. Or if you've never listened to the Trogs outtake, Google the Trogs outtake, and
you have played it tonight.
You will hear somebody doing speaking drummer to great comedic effect.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I would say listen to some drummers, Craig. Listen to some great drummers. In music that isn't too complex.
Yeah, listen
to Ringo.
Yeah, and listen to them talk about their grooves. There's a wonderful clip of Ringo discussing how he approaches. So what's really interesting about Ringo, he's left-handed, but he plays a right-handed kit.
Right.
And he's always leading. The reason Ringo's fills sound the way they do is because he's leading with the wrong hand.
He's going the wrong way around the roundabout.
Yeah. So he ends up sounding like Ringo. Yeah, really cool.
Dan Stuff says, I think it's more about how to speak to the drummer. They speak a different language.
Got to punch the information in.
Yeah. So listen, just listen and separate out. Listen to the kick drum. Listen to what the kick drum is doing. Listen to what the snare is doing. And don't worry about the other stuff just for a minute. And you'll soon notice some patterns that crop up again and again and again and again, because that's the nature of pop and rock drumming.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would do that, and then have a sound for the bass drum, which is usually something low and thuddy.
Perfect.
And something higher and more ringy for a snare. Or ching if you go for Chad Smith's snare drum sound. I do like a ringy snare done.
Right.
Do you like a ringy snare?
It depends.
Yeah, I really do.
I'd see there's every now and then I like a tea towel snare.
Yeah.
Boom. Nothing. Just yeah.
Thud. Doug always uses tea towels, but who used tea towels?
Nan.
Ringo.
Oh, there you go.
You see it in Get Back, he's got tea towels on the...
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Or if they're not, they might not actually be tea towels, might just be bits of cloth, but I think they're tea towels.
Afternoon tea towels.
Well, they were British. Ranzer.
G'day,
no.
mate.
Sorry, Whit Anderson.
Woo.
Hello, mate. He says, Funky Friday sent me down a DI amped rabbit hole. I don't often think about shaping amp tone at the mixer, but it's powerful, potentially sad given the amount of obsessive tweaking of the EQ I do on my board. Much love from Woo.
I loved that. That was brilliant.
It's such a specific sound, and once you've heard it and messed about with it, you can't unhear it.
And you can pick it out.
Yeah. And it's
great.
such a great sound. And as you will well know, Dan and I've, or you may well know, Dan and I've done videos on Going Direct, and we hate it as a sort of everyday standard guitar tone, but used in the right context, it's brilliant, especially mixed in. So
yeah,
it's cool, isn't it? Especially now, there is direct and there's direct. Going through 50 grand's worth of lovely old analog Neve or API or EMI or, Audient, whatever, Trident, whatever it might be, classic Helios, old beautiful studio gear, is not quite the same as plugging into your
Mackie,
your 59 quid interface. However, I think if you learn to use it and you learn what the plugins do, it's amazing what you can achieve with that stuff.
Yep.
So, nice one. And I'm glad the show inspired you to give it a go. Ranzer.
Okay, mate.
D and M and B and K and H and R. H has actually gone to Glasgow.
Yes, he has.
Yeah. Good on him.
He's braver than me.
He says the Funky Show was absolutely wait for it, milk-based product.
Toe cheese?
Toe jam? No, jam's not made of milk.
Toe tapioca pudding.
Toe tappy. Yeah, tappy. Toe tappy. Could be. Or toe cheesy.
Toe cheesy? It was toe cheese. Brilliant.
Was absolutely... Okay. Sorry, Ran, we're being a bit dense. I'm officially starting the petition to see more of these soon.
We were talking about that before, and other genres that we could use that approach in. Yeah, possibly. There was a few specific things that we wanted to cover in that episode, just because of the resurgent nature of what's going on with funk at the moment. But absolutely, there's no reason that we couldn't take that approach and do other things with it. It was really fun.
Yeah, and because we kept it quite narrow with funk, it was easy to sort of zero in on a particular bit.
Sure.
And offer some useful help. If you did take rock or blues, like he just said, it's so vast, you'd have to find a bit, slice it up and say, we'll do that.
Guitar tones of Sun Studios from 1957 to 59.
See, now that would be a good show.
There you go.
Yeah. That would be a great show. Rodrigo Guaspari. Hi, Rodrigo.
Hello, mate.
Always good to hear from you. He says, lovely show on Friday, boys. Love the shows where you take us through a journey. I discovered some great artists too. Cheers. And he says, this one is to second Craig Dewler. Suggestion on the speaking drummer, that would be great. On speaking drummer. Yeah, wow. I've always been too scared to tell the drummer what to play. It's like if they said, yeah, can you do this there, mate? I'd be like,
You have your...
Unless you're producing, and this is some other environment, you can politely go somewhere else, mate. Although I will, obviously take rhythm cues from a drummer. They're like, no, mate, it's not that, it's this.
Oh, I know that chord.
That's not what they say, that's what I hear. Maybe we get a drummer in then. Maybe we get Dougie in and go, how do we speak drummer?
Okay. Yeah.
How to speak drummer.
Shut up!
Maybe get two drummers in.
And just record them talking to each other.
What'd you have for tea then, mate? Like, peas. At the Jeff Beck tribute gig, it was totally brilliant. There was two drummers on stage. And there's been numerous bands down the years that have famously done two drummers. It was so cool.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
King Crimson touring with three.
Are they?
Yeah.
What, all play at the same time?
Yeah. It's incredible.
Mate, that's flipping
It's
cracking.
incredible.
I think, didn't the Derek Trucks band have two drummers?
Yeah. There was definitely a point where that was happening. Yeah. I went and saw the Crimson years ago when Jeremy Stacey just started playing for them. And, my goodness, it was flippin' awesome.
And Rodrigo also says, Rodrigo Gaspari, BV, thank you. Legend.
The cheese thing.
Dairy.
Right. Legendary. Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Legend tapioca.
Thank you. Anyway, Rodrigo says, and this one is to say the joke last week, another joke that we didn't get, was that Paul Stacey was off by 1 hour because he told Noel to put the knobs at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Again, sorry. Sometimes there's a barrier. Andrew Moore, or Moore. Yeah, I think it's Moore. M-O-H-R. Andrew Moore. Follow-up question from a few weeks ago. Vintage ample guitar. I ended up with a Vibreverb reissue after watching the Ainsley video and a new X14. Is that your new power supply?
JX14 is in your power supply. Wow, awesome.
But X14 could also be some other thing, maybe a guitar. Yeah. Those Vibreverb reissues are hard to find and they are really great.
Yeah.
There's various versions of them. Some of them are 2x10, some are 1x15.
Right.
Ainsley's a 2x10 and he's got Celestian Alnico Gold 10 inches in it and it sounds really great. If you haven't seen that video, Ainsley came in a couple summers ago, Ainsley Lister, and took him from, he's always been a kind of guitar into amp kind of guy, has a lovely, with the guitar full up, lovely thick distortion and plenty of bite and treble and all that. And then he uses the volume control to get his clean tones. And he was just looking for something a little more to play with. So we made him wet dry and gave him a delay pedal, which he wanted. And I genuinely thought he was going to
knock it on the head,
bin it off within 2 months, but he's still using it. He's on tour at the moment and he said he can't get away from it. He loves it.
Yeah.
So
I remember seeing him at the Birmingham Guitar Show and he sounded so flippin' good. And I loved hearing that delay in the mix with the way he does his thing. It's just like, wow.
What we need to do now is take him on to the next level, because what he's got currently is a bunch of pedals all chained up on a board, which is totally fine. It sounds great, but I have a worry about its robustness as a touring item, because he's stamping on that delay pedal for the tap tempo.
Right. I'll get him in and get a quartermaster sorted out for him.
Yeah. Something that's a bit more and actually roadworthy. Because I think I don't know did I do that board or did you do it? No, you tightened it up, didn't you? I did it and then you tightened it up and made it. So it probably needs the next, because he works flipping hard. He does loads of gigs.
He does. Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Let's do that.
Yeah. James Blessed. Hi, James. He says, no question, just an observation. Nobody does a tangent better than TPS. And I absolutely love it. Keep up the great work, gents, and much love. Thank you, James.
Thank you, buddy.
I think Vic and Bob do, to be fair. If you've never watched Gone Fishing with Bob Mortimer and Paul Whitehouse, it's just brilliant.
Indeed.
I don't even like fishing. Matt McGrath, hello Matt. He says, Legends, congrats on the Noel video. It's been wonderful to see all of your success.
Oh, thank you, mate.
As far as not being able to play loud, the DIY punk scene is going strong. I doubt I'll see a silent basement gig, lol.
Come on.
Okay.
That's brilliant.
That's really good to hear.
You know what? In the current climate, we need some DIY punk gigs.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. I like it. Sorry, I'm just checking my phone because BV keeps in touch and tells me things I need to know as we're going through.
Leo Ubios says, Dan, I know you love Holdsworth. Please make a fusion guitar episode, please. You know what? The next time Greg Howe is in the country, I'm going to grab him and get him on the show. because he's amazing.
Yeah. There's a bunch of people we could get in that vein, aren't there? Who, if he wasn't going to be here for a long time, I'm sure there are other people we could lean on for a bit of that.
Sure.
I mean, Dan's much more au fait than I am and probably could get closer to it than I could, but it is so far out of anything I understand or could ever play. I think we need to get somebody else in to make it stand up.
Yeah, sure.
And have a chat about that. Someone was asking about, could we do a show on Holdsworth's tone? It was like, wow, yeah. So much of Holdsworth's tone, despite quite complex rigs sometimes, and so much of Holdsworth's tone was Holdsworth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true of everybody, but I think if you hear like a heavily overdriven chorused guitar, for example, if that might have been one thing he was doing.
The 16-tap delay thing that he did with that Yamaha UG Stomp.
The UG Stomp, okay.
Far out.
And you think that by putting all those effects on, you can sound like Holdsworth. It's like, no, not really. Yeah, amazing. We should get Kurt Rosenwinkel on.
Yeah, well, I've been messaging him, and he says when he's in the country, he'd gladly come on.
He'll do it.
He is a musical universe unto himself, that man.
Yeah.
Incredible. And
from Rosenwinkel to Rosenquist.
Nice.
Yeah, look at that.
There you go.
I should be on the telly now.
Yeah, he should be.
Yeah. Christopher Rosenquist. Hello, gentlemen. What does a clean boosting clon do that an EQ pedal cannot? Is it all about the nose and whatnot? Right. So it's about how the signal is amplified. And in the clon, obviously, it has op amps and clipping diodes, and if it's clean, obviously those clipping diodes aren't being used, but it has this absolutely giant headroom in terms of voltage because it uses a charge pump.
Yeah, you've got huge amounts of headroom because you're mixing 3 signals inside a clon.
Yeah.
So it needs all that headroom so it can mix them in appropriately.
And then, it has the EQ circuit. So can you approximate it with a simple EQ pedal or a boost? Absolutely you can. And you can get really close, actually. Mm. But there is a sonic character of that particular circuit design, the components used and the way in which they're put together, that give it its unique sound. You can totally approximate it with other things, but it has a unique sound.
Yeah, and don't forget, it's not just bump at 1K.
No.
There's a shape to it that is dynamic and reactive. Also, because you can add a bit of grit in with it. Yeah, Then
there's the buffer, there's the slew rate of the chip, there's all of the things that just make it unto itself, which is not necessarily to say makes it this golden thing that sounds magic, because a lot of people really, really don't like them. Like the current rig I'm running, I don't love the clon in that particular rig. It doesn't sit as well as some other things. So the Holy Grail, because they're so expensive and rare and all of that, it doesn't equate to you're going to love it.
Sure.
You may well love an EP boost and a bit of EQ more. So, yeah, you can certainly approximate it, but a bit like anything else that you approximate, unless it's the actual thing or the actual circuit and components, then it's always going to be different. Now, whether that different is worse, better, or whatever is purely personal choice.
Indeed.
But those things, those op amps, transistors, they all have a sound when they are married together in a circuit.
Indeed. They all do a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as much of it is about sound as it is about feel with the clon, I would say.
Yeah. Because, the headroom thing, one of my favourite tones is the mixed clon after his blue fuzz face into the 2-rock is like, and we've done a similar setup with a bunch of different fuzzes and a bunch of different boosts, but there's a sound that you get out of the combination of those two. And the other thing is, because you know that sound so well, and you're not messing around trying to get it. It's like, no, it's there, and then you just play. And if you were trying to approximate that sound with something else, the amount of time you spend messing around, you know, it's like you stop thinking about, does this work or not?
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about, does this sound like the clone after the fuzz
Yeah,
face?
yeah.
And it's the wrong road to go down.
Yeah. Yeah. Dustin Thiessen says, our Lord and Saviour Tom Bukovac doesn't like a clon.
There you go.
He's one of many, many people who don't. So it's certainly not everybody's holy grail.
My Secret Machine says, Dan, thoughts on Julian Lage? Did you see the Rick Beato's recent interview? Cheers, guys. Yeah, I haven't seen all of it, but he's extraordinary. What a beautiful musician. Just wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. And so unique.
So, yeah, really great.
If you didn't get that name, Julian Lage. Some people say Lage, but I think it's Lage. I don't know.
Yeah.
Lage.
Lagi.
Yes. And Julian Dave. Paul Matulovic.
G'day, mate.
Hello, Paul. Long time since we've heard from you. Hope you're doing well, buddy. He says, positive vibes for hopes of the ultimate interview featuring Rick Potato and John Mayers. And he says, Paul also says, thank you for your generosity, Paul, as well. He says, sifting through some old pick and mix, and I thought I'd pick up a 3-leaf Chromatron.
Oh, come on.
In keeping with last show's funky vibes, but here prices for them are unreal. Makes me wonder what I missed.
Yeah.
It was a filter, was it?
Yeah. It's like, so I was put onto those guys by Paul Turner, who is a massive Neutron fan, and his ears are extraordinary, and he's such a great field player. And that, of all the Neutron-esque things, that's the one he says they've done it. And it really is an extraordinary thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that. Memory isn't what it was. I guess they didn't make many, presumably.
Yeah, they weren't mass produced. I mean, beautifully handmade things.
Tom Dickinson. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Tom.
Tom says, hi, guys. Met you at an experience day in April. Hello, Tom. It was my best day ever.
Ah.
No, he says, best day ever, which could mean a number of things. I'm now using a Grossman ISO Plus.
Come on.
A Delta 2, Sontronics Delta 2 ribbon mic. Getting great tones. How do you position your Delta 2?
Well, I'll defer to you on that, because I don't use the Delta 2 in my Grossman.
Yeah, I always right in the centre of the cone. Literally bang on the centre of the speaker. Because even though it's full frequency response, the nature of the ribbon means you can just put it bang on in the centre of the speaker. However, do an experiment. Start with it bang on in the centre of the dust cap of the speaker with the ribbon, I was going to say diaphragm, the ribbon facing the centre of the speaker. Then you might even want to set up a loop to do this so that you're comparing apples with apples. Record that and then move it to where the dust cap joins the main cone. Record that and then move it into the centre of the cone and be astounded at the difference you hear.
Yeah.
And then what that will give you is a sort of reference to where you might like it the best, where it's best suited to the particular speaker you've got. And only really by hearing it, physically setting it up, listening to it, hearing it and moving it, will you ever properly understand the importance of mic positioning. And same goes for distance away. I don't know what the latitude is for that in the Grossman. Can you get it further away and closer to?
Yeah.
Yeah, so do both. Go horizontal and go vertically, and go as far away as you can and as close as you can. the good news with the Delta 2 is it can take really high SPL, so you won't damage it. The only thing I don't know about the Delta 2 is like with a 121, for example, a Royer, the most famous guitar ribbon, the second most famous guitar ribbon mic. The first one probably being the Bayer M180.
Right.
I don't know, maybe there's loads more. There's loads. Sorry. A very famous ribbon mic, Royer 121, largely considered to be the best ribbon mic for guitar speakers. They recommend you keep it upright.
Yeah.
Because it is said, I think, that the ribbon can sag if it's on its side. Now, I don't know what the situation for that is in the Delta 2. Do you know that?
This is the Sontronics, right?
Yeah.
So I did have a conversation with them, and they said it should be fine. Best practice is to keep it vertical, but because of the nature of how they do their thing, it should be fine. What I would say is absolutely set it up, record and everything with it there, but if you're done and you're not going to be recording for a couple of days, just put the mic so it's on its side so that the ribbon is horizontal.
Okay.
Vertical.
Yeah, so actually change the physical orientation of the cab.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah. Just take the lid off, just turn the mic out on the side, put the lid back on, and then when you're going to record again, just tilt it back.
Right. Okay. So yeah, experiment, listen to it in different positions. I've always found with the Delta 2, just straight in the centre of the dust cap is the nice way. Now then, it gets a little more complex because it really depends what you hit then. If you take that and you come into a really nice analog mic pre, what can happen if you mic a speaker too close to the dust cap, the centre, is you can get quite a lot of sibilant, scratchy high end, which can be unpleasant. That is exacerbated by cost-effective interfaces, particularly ones that don't have a great deal of headroom. We learnt this the hard way with our old Zoom H6 recorder, which is a brilliant thing. Amazing. It's a brilliant tool, but it can't really take 160 dB off a nice mic, and the headroom in the thing just starts to lose. So what you might be thinking you're hearing as mic positioning could well be your front end of your audio interface struggling, and even then the meters were way down in the green. Yeah, and it's still it's those transients. We were pulling our hair out. Yeah, totally. And then we ended up going to the Universal Audio Apollos, and they do not do that. Yeah. And they do it even less when there's some nice analog stuff in front of it, because all those transformers, all that lovely stuff starts to get rid of some of that, and you can get away with being dead on the front of that speaker, which is to say mic placement's really important, but then so is everything else in your recording chain. And the more you listen to it, the more you experiment, the more you get it wrong, to be frank, which is what we did for the first 7 years of that pedal show ongoing. Is the only way you really learn, and it's boring, but it is enlightening once you hear it and you nail it down and you go, oh, it's that. You never learn anything from getting it right. No, that's very interesting. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, bit of a long answer, but listen to the different mic positions and see. Also, people say. Listen. Also experiment with gain. Record way under. So on an analog desk, you would set your mic gain so it's just peaking a bit. Yeah. And that's nice in an analog environment, or it can be. You don't want to do that in a digital environment. Yeah. But then by having it too low, you've then got to boost it somehow using a gain plugin or whatever in the back end of your DAW, and that can be lifeless and flat sounding. So there will be an optimum level of input gain that you're going for as well, which will also have an EQ effect. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Good luck, mate. And that's why there's 5 million quid's worth of stuff in expensive recording studios. Yeah. Dustin Thiessen brings up a good point. He says, I'm not sure a ribbon is the best option for an ISO cab. during the because of the figure 8 pattern that most ribbons have, it might be picking up too much of the box. Yes, that's quite a good point actually. So I'll get one so we can explain it.
Okay. Yeah. One thing about the Grossman ISO cab, my issue with ISO cabs has always been an annoying standing wave that they have. They always sound very boxy. The Grossman, it just doesn't sound like that. With the good mic positioning,
Oh, goodness me.
it's it just sounds fantastic. Right, there it is.
Okay, it has two sides, a front and a back. And a figure 8 pickup pattern would be down there and then the same on the back. So imagine two balloons, one attached underneath, one attached on the top. Well, a figure 8 with this being the middle. So it picks up from the front and from the back. That was probably the worst ever figure 8 description in the history of figure 8 descriptions. Yeah, I'll put it back here. So you put it on the amp there, look. See that? Picks up the amp from the front, but it also picks up the room from the back. And in an ISO cab, what Dustin is quite rightly saying, despite Dan's disclaimer about the Grossman, is that it will pick up the front of the speaker, but then it also picks up all the reflections off the back of the box, which in most ISO cabs sounds terrible, but in the Grossman, you said they sorted it out.
Yeah, yeah. It's just giving it a really dead environment.
Let us move on.
Indeed.
We hope that helps. Yes, we hope that helps. Steve Mass. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Steve.
He says, if you could pick two artists, living or dead, to play together, who would you pick?
Ooh. Oh, heavens. Who would I love to hear playing together? I would love to hear... I'd love to hear Joni Mitchell in her prime playing with Jeff Buckley.
Nice. That's very nice.
I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Because she was all about a collab. The stuff that she did with Thelonious Monk, and you know, she's just wonderful.
Remarkable career, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always changing, always progressing, always looking for something new and inspiring. It's a great documentary on Joni, actually, on I don't know, one of the TV channels. I'd go James Jamerson.
Oh, come on.
Bass player. And
Herbie Flowers playing Big Bottoms.
Boo doo 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 doo. I'm going to say James Jamerson and Steve Jordan.
Ah, come on.
Steve Jordan's my favourite drummer and James Jamerson is my favourite ever bass player. So
nice.
There you go, those two.
Brilliant.
Yeah. That's one bass solo and drum solo I could sit through all night. Thanks for the question, Steve.
Drum stop.
I hope everyone's putting in their suggestions. Stevie Wonder and somebody called Chopin, says David Pekarsky. Chopin.
Kurt Cobain and John Lennon, says Todd Roy. Steve Gaines and SRV, says Eagle Ray Rob.
Kurt Cobain and John Lennon. Now that would be so interesting, says Todd Roy.
Scott Gaylor says Jeff Beck and Miles. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris, you're right. I did mean Mingus. Yeah, not Thelonious. Child Mingus.
Dan Harris, Rory Gallagher and Hendrix challenge. Let's put it to bed. Duel. Sid Barrett and David Gilmour, says PD. Nice. Yeah. Nice. Selen says, do you ever use the fry at power station? If not, why not? I love it.
It's wonderful. Just haven't had need for it because we get to turn up here nice and loud. But I think it's a really wonderful piece of gear. Yeah,
Yeah, we used to use it a bit back in the day, didn't we?
Yeah.
When we had to be a little bit more careful at the last place. So it's really great for that, being able to attenuate a bit. And certainly, as you will know, the presence settings and the different resonance settings means that the nature of attenuation, for anyone who hasn't tried it, is that it does rather change the tone quite drastically. So having some global adjustment for the bottom end resonance and the presence especially is a big deal, and the power station does that particularly well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as Dan says, we don't really have it's not required here, because if we want a little amp, we want the little amp cranked. And if we want a big amp, we want a big amp cranked.
But I have used it as a valve power stage before.
Yeah.
Going out of Kingsley stuff into that, and it's wonderful. Really cool.
As a straight power amp. Yeah. Good shout. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it's not the 50-50, but it's pretty good.
Is it not?
Well, it's not that, as I say. It's not a stereo thing.
Is it not 50 watts a side?
It's only mono. It's only
is
mono
it?
power amp. Yeah.
Oh, there we are.
Stereo.
Okay. Of course. Only mono. Imagine that. I'm joking, of course. Ado enough done. I loved the most recent Funky video, but in all artists that you mentioned, there was no sign of Prince. And I wonder if this was intentional. Love to hear what you think of both his approach to funk and guitar and effects.
He just did so much more than just funk.
Yeah,
he was
pretty funky.
He was very funky, but he's an artist that covered so much ground. But yeah, of course, man, far out. He doesn't get funkier than Prince. He's amazing. And
it wasn't intentional, by the way. We just didn't mention absolutely everybody in the history of funk ever. But yeah, I mean, hold Prince in the absolute highest regard.
Yeah. I remember.
I'm going to commit internet suicide and say I was never a fan of his guitar playing, but
okay. I remember there was a guitar player. He was the guitarist for someone I was working with at Twin Towns in Coolangatta on the border of New South Wales and Queensland. And astonishing musician, but he was Scandinavian, somewhere in that area, very straight, right? And he went and saw Prince one night, and he was sort of speak very serious. You know, he'd never moved on stage, and he said that he was there watching Prince, and he said he started dancing. He'd never danced before in his life. He just had to start dancing. He said it was just that moving.
I had a VHS. I never saw him, unfortunately, but I did have a VHS cassette of the Love Sexy tour.
Right.
And I couldn't stop watching it. It was like I'd never seen anything like that.
Right. On
that level of showmanship and production, and just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Wonderful.
Yeah. As expected, lots of people saying, really? Prince playing the guitar in Guitar Gently Weeps is iconic. Yeah, I'm not saying he wasn't good. I mean, there's plenty of guitar players that are absolutely great and brilliant and iconic, but maybe it's just not my taste, you know? That's fine. There's plenty of guitar players on that list, as I'm sure there are for every one of you out there, you know? Lots of things that we would recognise as iconic and amazing, but it doesn't mean you like it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I've managed to lose my place. Guitar Moog. Everyone, thank you for your generosity tonight in the super chat. Again, like the store, it does help us keep the wheels on the wagon.
Indeed.
As it were.
Thank you so much.
Guitar Moog says, good evend, which I guess is good evening from Belgium.
Ah.
Good you mentioned the attack sustain response of guitars in last week's Q&A. I suspect people think of tone as mainly EQ, but response is a big component.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Snappy, smooth, not just pickup dependent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we were talking about Jazz Masters, weren't we? Partly. and well, we were talking about the envelope of a funky guitar sound,
Yeah.
and then I think somebody might have mentioned Jazzmasters, which has got to be the perfect funk guitar.
It's a great funk guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're all perfect, aren't they? Because they all did a thing. There are Strat tones that are just, Noel Rodgers, his funk tone is perfect. But then so was Bootsy's brother, Callum.
Sorry, I'm just reading another comment. We need to keep looking at the camera because apparently it's focusing on the back wall.
Oh, okay.
Catfish Collins.
Catfish Collins.
Yes.
Callum. Yeah.
Gave him like
I gave him a Scottish.
Yeah. Well, what's become a very middle class white name. Anyway. Keep looking at the camera, Dan.
Sorry.
Sean Byra says, I'm not a Prince fan either. I am a Prince fan. I love Prince. I dig his music in a big way. So it's just, anyway, let's move on. Yes. So yeah, the response of a guitar is so much about that, isn't it? We're all like, and it's a really good point. We're all listening to EQ and gain and the actual, what we would call the sound.
Mm.
I've said this many times, the sound is only half of the tone, if that.
Yeah.
It might only be 30% of the tone experience.
Sure.
Because that is a physical phenomenon. That's why you want to shake your ass when somebody plays something funky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Barry Thomas. Hello, Barry.
Hey, Barry.
Hello from Toronto. I am now running a Hiwatt Custom 50, two Hiwatt Custom 50 combos with EVM12L speakers.
Come on.
What are the best practices for AC, power and multiple amps? We didn't try that thing.
No. So, don't overthink it. You need clean power, but one of the most simple things that you should always do, if you've got two amplifiers, run them off the same power pack. Don't have them into different outlets on the wall, just in case there is any potential difference between the outlets, then you'll get problems. But if you have them in the same power pack, the same four-way, then you should be good. But don't forget, if you're running two amplifiers, one of them needs to be isolated.
Yeah, and you do that from a device at pedal board level or back towards the amps. Did you just say this? Sorry, I'm dealing with a focus issue.
That's okay.
You don't do it with the mains cables of the amps.
No, that's right.
You make sure that one of the outputs is isolated. And the best way to do it is to buy Dan's humdinger.
That's
just
very kind.
buy a humdinger and all your problems are solved. Or an AB Baby if you want to switch between the two amps or have them both on together. So ABY, amp A, amp B, or Y both together. So if you want to switch this one on and have both together, AB Baby. If you just want to do the split and make sure it's isolated and phase corrected, humdinger. And that will answer all your problems. If for whatever reason you don't want to buy Dan's stuff, the Radial Big Shot ABY is also a good shout.
Yeah.
And Radial make really good stuff, sensible prices, and they're widely available as well. So,
yeah. But
please buy the humdinger from Dan.
Thank you, mate.
The camera is refocusing, by the way, because if it can't see an eye, it will refocus in the centre. This one's not posh enough to have eye tracking.
Is that the lens does that or the camera?
The camera.
The camera does that.
Well, the camera and the lens. The lens works. Yeah, it's the lens that's focusing, but the camera's telling it to focus.
Okay, got it.
The camera recognises the eye.
Okay.
Yeah, so apologies for that if we're doing a bit of focus searching. We could just stick it on manual focus, of course. Sam Colson. Hi, Sam. He says, hi, DNM. I'll probably be listening to this in the podcast on the way to Glasgow.
Oh, nice.
Glastonbury Festival is happening this week. He says, have you ever been? TPS should do a show there one year.
I've been a couple of times. I've been there at the invite of artists that are playing there, so my experience of Glastonbury is very different. I've heard tales. My wife would tell me tales of toilets at Glasgow on the last day, and when it rains there, it's a nightmare. Someone, the year that my wife was there, someone got trench foot. And that hasn't been a reported case of trench foot since World War One. And someone at Glasgow got trench foot. So, yeah, it can be rough.
I've worked there in two capacities. One, I've put up marquees there and taken them down and seen the horror of what that looks like. And two, as a journalist and been there side of stage and all that kind of stuff. And that's a very different experience. Going as a punter, nah. I'm just too old. Well, actually, no, I'm not too old. I'm too... it just doesn't appeal.
Sure.
Anymore. Sorry to everyone who goes and you have a great time. I would genuinely rather go and get my tent and go and be by the seaside with no music and my dog and my wife and no people. I would prefer that personally.
Okay.
That's grumpy, isn't it?
No, that's not grumpy. You're allowed to.
Yeah.
I'm
nearly 50 years old and I worked every major festival most of the major festivals, like working at them. And I got over it.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry to be grumpy. Anyone who's going to Glasgow, have a great time. Just go there. Bliss out for
It is a pretty special environment, but it's at the end of the week. If you're staying there for the full 5 days, that's a big commitment.
Yeah. But nice to have the abandon to be able to do it. Maybe that's the other thing. When you were younger and a bit more carefree, just taking a week to go and do that was a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it kind of isn't really.
No.
Not anymore.
No. Absolutely not.
Yeah. Good. Super Grumpy says, "I Dannyism." I know. Let's see who's next then. You got to keep looking at the camera, Dan.
Sorry. Someone said that my camera stare is reminiscent of Animal from the Muppets. Brilliant.
Nice one on the two Hiwatt Custom 50 combos with EVs anyway, Barry. That sounds pretty epic.
I bet you that's magic.
Yeah.
We're getting some new Hiwatts in, aren't we?
Hopefully, yeah. I need to talk to Arv and sort that out.
Because I'd love to have a go at that.
I was salivating slightly over Noel's 50s.
It's so good.
Our 100's amazing, but we just haven't found the right cab for it yet. And it does need a little tweakaroo. And it's so brutal. There isn't a sweet spot that I've found with it yet, really.
Right.
The sweet spot is...
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And as you know, Dan and I aren't afraid of volume. James Urquhart says, "Hi, James. James Urquhart. Currently refurbishing my 66 Bassman. Wondering if you believe that the brand of tubes makes a significant difference in the amp's tone. Any recommendations?"
Well, okay. If you're talking about modern tubes, then they are made differently now. And I think there is only 2 places or 3 places that make tubes nowadays. However, if you find some NOS Mullards or Telefunkens, or there's a whole bunch, they absolutely will make a difference, depending, of course, on what that valve is doing in the amp. So, for example, I've got a set of really old mullards that I keep for my AC30 if I'm recording it. And I've got a different bias. I've got a switch in the back. I modded the amplifier. So I had 3 different bias resistor levels depending on the power valves that I got in the back. And a really interesting thing about the old Vox amplifiers, if you look at the original schematic, they use a 50 ohm cathode bias resistor. They're all the 4 EL84s are all tied together through this one cathode bias resistor. In the original Voxes in the 60s, and when mullards were a thing, they could take that plate voltage and it would be, that mullards would just sit in this beautiful spot. But a modern valve, it's too much for it. So
It's too much.
It's too much.
Too much.
So if you replace that 50 ohm resistor with an 80 ohm resistor, a modern valve sits in a much more comfortable place. However, when I throw the old mullards in there, I got to switch it back to 50 ohms and it comes alive. And now, it's not necessarily that the valves sound different, but the way that the valves are made, they work differently with that cathode resistor doing its job. So, back in the day when you had like dozens of really great brands to choose from and they all did a thing, they absolutely did make a difference.
Yeah, one set of output valves, preamp valves, phase inverter, whatever it is, will sound different from another. Modern brands tend to be about selection. So they might all be coming from the same factories, and then it's about on what criteria they selected. So, whatever brand it is will have a big machine. They plug them all in, take a bunch of readings, and that will be their selection criteria. So that in itself might mean there's a difference. But for something as special as that, you really ought to be talking to an amp tech who really knows their stuff. And they'll be able to advise you much better than Dan and I can. Or, Derek at Watford Valves. Watford Valves, they just know tons of stuff about those amps, and they will advise you. I mean, they might send you down the cryogenic route, which I don't know anything about that, but talk to people who've got the experience. That's the thing to do.
Yeah, totally.
And if you know someone who's in and out of those amps all the time, then their advice is worth taking.
Yeah.
But yes, they do make a difference as to which ones you would. I mean, it would be foolish to say, go for JJs or go for groove tubes or go for whatever, because I don't know enough about it to make that sort of judgment.
Sure.
Anyway, lovely amp, flipping heck. What a great thing.
Amazing.
Andreas Johansson. Hi, Andreas.
Hi, mate.
Legs, how can you achieve Brian May style cleanup when you roll the volume pot down but not using cranked AC30s, i.e. without losing too much volume?
So one thing you need to remember about his sound is that he goes into a treble booster, and that treble booster is acting as his buffer. So, at some point there's got to be limiting a treble booster into a really nice gain stage. It can be the amp cranked.
Yeah.
One of my favourite sounds is I used to use this all the time, is my old Keeley Java Boost, and it was an early one. It still had a DC input on the side. They stopped doing that. So it's Keeley Java Boost into my old Hotcake, and far out, man. Awesome. And the cleanup on it is amazing. Now, the interesting thing about the cleanup on an old germanium transistor treble boost, it does the same thing as what happens with a good fuzz face.
Yeah.
You've got that, a lower impedance at the input, but it just works. So, yeah, that's a thing to that Brian May cleanup.
Hungry. Yeah, so get 2 overdriving devices. One that's doing more overdrive, I guess, but then you don't want it to be doing too much overdrive, and hit it with a treble booster, and then use the treble booster as the cleanup.
Yeah.
Because of what he just said, it reacts so, for want of a better word, violently to turning your volume down. It reacts very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Dynamically?
Yeah, but in a really non-linear way.
Right.
Like going from 10 to 8 on the guitar will drop all the distortion out of it. So yeah, try that. Nice overdrive pedal, treble booster into it, and then you can set your output volume from the second overdrive pedal, so you can play as loudly or as quietly as you like.
Yep.
And that should have the effect.
Ed wants to know if you're hungry.
I am. Sorry, Ed. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I'm hungry or just... I don't know. I have no idea. My stomach is rumbling though. Hope that made sense, Andreas. Austin Menges. Hello, Austin. I just wanted to send you a heartfelt thank you for all of the knowledge you've shared and for your constant encouragement to pursue creativity.
Ah.
I finally released an instrumental album, and it wouldn't have come to fruition without your show. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Congratulations, mate.
Nice one, Austin.
Yeah, tell us where we can hear it.
Yeah, and tell other people to go and listen to it. Austin's name is Austen, Austin Menges, Menges. So do a search for Austin Menges and see if you can find it.
That's so good.
Sean Gerolimatos. Sorry, Sean, you comment regularly, and I should have your surname down by now. Sean Gerolimatos says, Dan, thank you for the new power supply just when I needed it.
That's awesome. No, you're so welcome, mate. Thank you.
Dan released a new power supply last week called the Gen X14. Pretty special it is too.
Very lovely.
Although reading the comments on your launch video, I am reminded that nobody understands pedal power still.
It's a thing.
The VicP video we did made no impact on the world. Which is not. I don't mean to speak negatively of anyone for not knowing. It's just that the information doesn't seem to get out there.
We do what we can.
We do.
Yeah,
we do. We need to do more. Anyway, he says, Mick, how are you getting on with the Lola Imperials and your 335? Thank you, guys. I haven't used the 335 that much since I made the pickup change. Not for any other reason than when we've been doing shows, I tend to pick up the guitars that I think most people want to hear, which tends to be a Strat and a Les Paul to cover the most obvious bases. However, I did use the 335 in the funk show, and there's a show coming up on Friday about boosts. I know we've done lots of shows on boosts in the past, but there's some really interesting ones that have come out just recently, and I used the 335 in that. And I raised the pickups up slightly from when I did the video, and it just sounds... I think it sounds brilliant.
It does.
I much prefer it to the Memphis pickups.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
Just got a bit more, shall we say, dynamic range. It can do more across the range of the tone controls. It's just a bit lighter, brighter, and it's got a bit more of that quack, which I would associate. However, Thorpe did send me a very scary text from that's come via Dan.
Right.
As a friend of his has a very special 345 that he's looking to possibly sell for a relatively sensible amount of money. And I'm like going... genuinely thought about moving the old Klon on to raise some funds.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But then I realised it's just insanity, and now is not the time in my financial life to be buying more guitars. Unless the money could be raised from elsewhere. Anyway, yeah, I do. I really like the low winds. They suit the guitar really well. Interestingly, in the show that you'll see on Friday, if you watch it on Boosts, we talk about not just the particular boosts and how they sound, we talk about useful applications for boosts. One of which is some boosts have a high pass filter, which confusingly enough is basically a low cut because it only allows frequencies past the high pass to pass, right?
Yeah.
And that can be super useful on a 335, especially on the neck pickup. And we get into a bit of that. And the guitar had real poise, I thought. Sounded splendid. Anyway, I like it. Ronald Elish. Hello, Ronald.
Hey, Ronald.
He says, good morning from San Diego. I'm a long-time fan of your shtick. Love the energy and passion for all things guitar. Thank you for your tutelage.
Oh, mate.
Thank you,
You're so
Ronald.
welcome. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry for pronouncing it San Diego, but that's what Anchorman said. So.
San Diego.
Yes. Actually, probably closer to its original name, I would have thought as well.
Okay.
Like Los Angeles.
Was that?
Elias Blum. Hello, Elias.
Hello, Elias.
I procured an all-original 76 Deluxe Reverb.
Come on.
And my band and I agree I've reached the tonal promised land.
Great.
Wouldn't be here without TPS. Thank you.
Wow. That's brilliant, mate. It's really nice when the rest of the band can tell the difference as well. That's lovely.
Oh, it's very unusual, isn't it, for the rest of the band to say, God, you sound really good tonight, mate. Normally it's, please can you turn down, is it your round?
Where's all the cash?
When can we go home?
No, that's brilliant, mate. Well done.
Sorry, we have overlooked a super chat from Scott Pickett. My apologies, Scott, and BB, thanks for the reminder. Happy Monday, gents, says Scott Pickett. Loved the funk show. It got me so funked up, I bought a Digitech Synthwah.
Come on.
So, question for Dan then, where would you put it in your wet dry signal chain?
So it's up the front with my gain stage. So when I was using that, I was using my Love Pedal Eternity with it in the same loop. And I actually had the Eternity going into the Synthwah. My wet dry, you can split it and have the envelope just going on one side and the dry going on the other, but it's most effective when you have it going to both amplifiers, because if you're doing this synthy filter thing with it, you want to get that into as many amplification sources as you possibly can because it sounds flippin' epic. But normally I would always put the filter first and then any gain stages after that, because it works dynamically off the output of the pickup. However, for some reason, stick an overdrive pedal in the front of that and it just sounds magic. So I would experiment with that, sticking a gain stage in front of it, getting it a little bit cranky, and then, yeah. Because it tends to like a slightly limited sound going into it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because that helps the transient.
Exactly, and it helps the sustain of the...
Yes.
Yeah.
So after your main overdrive, before the split.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sebastian Schlapper, or Schlapper Flash. Sebastian Schlapper Flash. I love it. I wonder if Slapper means...
Slap at the bass.
Yeah. Hey guys, lots of love from Luxembourg.
Oh, thank you, mate.
Thank you, Sebastian. Lots of love back to Luxembourg. Not sure if I've ever been. Have you ever been to Luxembourg?
I've been near there. I don't know if I've been to Luxembourg.
No, I don't think so.
I went and saw a Papa Chubby gig, either in Luxembourg or somewhere around there.
Right.
Yeah, he was great.
Papa Chubby. I interviewed him once for Guitarist. He was too.
Yeah, rotund.
Yeah. Is, shall we say.
Papa rotund.
Groovy. Well, that will be the super chats exhaustalized.
Lovely.
Let us dive headlong, Daniel, into the main comments this evening. Joe Marshall, could you guys be any more obsessed with wet dry? No.
Oh, we could try.
Yeah, we love it. I think we found something on Friday that it probably doesn't offer any great benefit to, and that was funk.
Yeah.
Not saying you couldn't do it and make it sound great, but we both got to the end of the funk show saying, yeah, no real need for wet dry here.
No.
But for pretty much everything else.
Yeah. I mean, you could put a compressor on one side and stuff, but yeah.
Well, apart from the ultimate wet dry, of course, which is an amp and a direct.
There you go.
Signal.
You had and you did it. That's brilliant.
Boom.
Yeah.
No, we do love it. We do love it. Right. Steph Rugm says, Fuzz, now that I've got your attention, the Fjord Fuzz Berserk as an always-on basis thrown into a green carrot pedals Russian muff for meaner stuff. Yay or nay? Interestingly enough, we've got some Fjord Fuzz stuff out there. Danish
And
Pete.
we have green carrot pedal stuff.
Yeah, Danish Pete brought it down last time he came. Personally speaking, stacking fuzzes, I wouldn't do that. Too much fuzz.
It depends on how you set the fuzz, though.
Yeah. I guess if anything's going to be stackable, it would be a muff type, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Oh, this is exciting. So, I don't know any green carrot pedals fans. If you recognise this, that is a hint as to a special guest we have coming up on the show.
Oh, so it is on
Yeah.
August the 1st.
Which will be brilliant.
Yes.
Let's see if anyone gets it.
Yes. We will reveal it, but see if anyone guesses. Yeah, so... Oh no, what have I just done? I guess... So if you don't know the Berserk, you say it's an open fuzz face with a bass cut. So I would put that first, personally. If it's got a bass cut, the place for that is in front of the more full frequency thing. However, think about Analog Mike's classic Sunline. That's the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a Sunline into a treble booster.
Sunline into the treble booster, that's correct.
Which I've never understood.
Because it's either way you do it, you're stuffed.
Yeah.
And I think because of the Beano boost, you can set it at full frequency.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I want is to have this lovely big fat sound going into a treble booster, which is going to get rid of all the bottom end.
Yeah.
The point of a treble booster is you want it at first before the lovely big fat thing, so that the big fat thing doesn't get too fat and flubby. I'm just all sorts of mental pictures of sofas and cakes and anyway. So that it boosts the stuff you want to hear, the trebles and the aggression in the overdrive and all of that, but doesn't make it crap out so much that it becomes indistinct. And that's how treble boosters work in front of overdrive pedals and also in front of amps. So personally speaking, I would go with the Fjord first and the Big Muff after. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of fuzz.
Yeah. Yeah. Be fun.
Groovy.
Paul Abbott says, "What is that Les Paul, Dan?" This is my old R8 from 2002 that I bought from Paul Stacey many years ago. We'll have to find an excuse to get Paul on the show.
Oh dear. We're seeing him on Monday. Oh yeah, no VCQ next Monday, I don't think, because it's the Bonham's Peter Green auction.
Cool.
Which we're going to, I think. Bonham's are auctioning a bunch of Peter Greens. And anyway, Paul's playing there.
Awesome.
And so am I.
You're playing? Fantastic.
Not quite sure how that's going to go yet, but there we are.
You're playing any of his gear?
No, I think it's going to be a little bit more back.
Okay.
Yeah. He said, Jeremy's not drumming because Jeremy's too loud.
Okay.
Anyway, we should get Paul on the show. So this used to belong to him and has been on tour with the Black Rose. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah. Yes. Black Rose and Chris Robinson. Yes.
There you go.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Robin Aristorina says, Mike Venart, correctamundo, good sir. We have Mike Venart coming on the show.
Which is really cool, actually. Lots of people have been asking for Mike for a long time. Dan has made it happen. And, yeah, it'd be groovy.
Yeah, it'd be really great. Did you, that first Oceansides album, man, we had it on in the workshop the other day. Wow. Just incredible. And the new record that he's done, like that metal thing, and he's got Simon singing on it.
Oh, wow. It's outside of my frame of reference, so I've got some homework to do.
Really good.
I'll be technical assistants that day, Dan. Dusty Miller. I like my Strats and Tellies, and I use a Hudson Electronics broadcast, which fattens up the single coils. It has a low cut, or I think a high pass knob. Is that the same as a high cut, but for the low end? Yes. Where are you? Right. I don't know what the difference between a high pass and a low cut is. They have the same effect.
Yeah, but the low cut, you can dial in the amount of low, whereas...
Oh dear. So this knob here on the broadcast on the left is a low cut. So here, maximum bass. 0 o'clock maximum bass. Minimum bass.
Right.
So it's actively cutting low end.
Right.
A high pass filter, you say, okay, allow everything past 50 hertz through, or 100 hertz, or 200 hertz, wherever you set it. So that I guess your experience of it is the same.
Yeah.
Maybe Gordon Rankin can wade in and let us know if there's any difference between a low cut and a high pass filter. But yeah, really, really useful. Our conversation before about treble boosters. If you just want the fullest boost possible, low cut on 0. But if you run this into other overdrive pedals, I always just put it around a bit so it cuts a bit of bottom end so nothing gets too flubby, and then all the way around you've essentially got, well, you've got something closer to a treble booster, especially when it's getting a bit...
Clef Turnip says high pass and low cut are the same.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And then I suppose there's all sorts of things you can do that would set the steepness of the curve. We're both hungry now.
Yeah.
That will set the steepness of the curve. So, you know, if you set your low cut at 50 hertz, but it only goes off at 12 dB an octave, and it's or whatever it is, it's only shaped like that. But if it's much steeper, then it gets rid of everything.
Right.
God. Yeah, open up an EQ plugin on your DAW and mess around with low cuts.
Yeah. Edna O'Donoghue says, surely you guys will be able to help me with this issue. Any advice on how I can get my son to give me back the overdrive pedal he borrowed some months ago? Charge him rent on the pedal.
Yeah. Offer him something flashier.
Oh, distract him with the flashy thing and take the overdrive. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. That's what I would do. Basic distraction. Rich Robinson would be a great guest, says Todd Roy.
Wouldn't he just?
Can you imagine? He sets such a great tone with minimal setup. Worth considering anyway. Yeah, I've interviewed Rich a couple of times over the years.
Right.
Would it be out of place to say he's not the most ebullient person I've ever met?
No, I think that's fair.
Yeah. But my goodness me, Black Crowes remain one of my favourite bands of all time ever.
Sure. Yeah.
And back to what we were saying earlier, the more I listen, the more I hear.
Yeah.
And that stuff he lays down, and those tones and the orchestration of the guitar parts is like...
What about...
just brilliant.
What's the other guy?
Mark Ford.
Mark Ford.
Yeah, Mark would be great to have on.
He'd be amazing.
It's really, it's funny, we talk about influences and stuff growing up, and I would always talk about Clapton and Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan. Mark Ford and John Frusciante
Right.
are as every bit as influential
But
to
didn't
me.
he run into you at the show? Didn't he say, "I watch your show"?
Mark Ford did, yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
It's crazy.
That era of Frusciante or Frusciante, however you say it, the Chili Peppers dude, Mark Ford work in the Black Crowes, and Mike McCready of Pearl Jam. Those three guys were as influential on anything I play as Stevie Ray or
Amazing.
or Hendrix or any of the the first generation, as it were, second generation, should we say? Yeah, and sometimes we forget, don't we? Anyway,
Van Zanten says the Crowes' first 2 albums still hold up after all these years.
the second one especially, I think. Mind you, a lot of people really like Amorica, and I really like By Your Side. I've been listening to that a lot.
Right.
Yeah. But Southern Harmony is a masterpiece of work. I love it. Flowers of Sulphur. Could you describe the main differences we might expect to hear in a wet-dry rig versus the same effects using the 4-cable method in a single amp? For anyone who doesn't know, 4-cable method is where you set it up so your gain pedals, overdrive pedals hit the front of the amp, but your wet effects are in the amp's effects loop. So they come after all your overdrive, which keeps them cleaner and nicer, and it's a really nice way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So difference between wet-dry then, where you would have one amp without any wet effects, reverb, delay, all that stuff, and another amp with it, but your overdrives in our world would be hitting both, compared to one amp that's getting everything.
Yeah. So you've got 2 sources with a wet-dry. You've got 2 amplification sources. One of those amplifiers is getting gain stages. One is getting gain stages plus delays and reverbs and wet effects. The 4-cable method is basically one amplifier, and you are simply using the channel, the gain channel, as the overdrive or whatever. You can still hit the front of that with pedals and stuff, but you're taking the signal from the preamp into the wet effects and then back into the power stage. So all the 4-cable method is, you've got an insert point that goes between the preamp and the power amp. It's just a link. And that link, if you imagine the link is a patch cable, you take that patch cable out and you plug in your delays and reverbs in that link. And that's what happens when you run your cables out to your pedal board and back to the power stage. So it's very different than wet-dry. It's just, if you think of the preamp like another pedal, like a really nice valve overdrive, that's basically what you're doing.
Yeah. So let's say you had 2 of exactly the same amps. Let's say, for example, we had a Mesa Lone Star, which is an amp that we know well because we've got 2 of them, and it's got a really good effects loop. So we take one Mesa Lone Star, we do the 4-cable method, so that the wet effects sit in the effects loop and it's all coming out of one speaker. Let's say they're 112 combos. Sounds great. Brilliant. Now we add a second Lone Star. So we've got 2. And instead of those wet effects being in the effects loop of just the one amp, they hit the other amp and the overdrive hits both amps. So what we've got coming out of this one is just overdrive, and what we've got coming out of this one is all the wet. It sounds 3 times as big and 3 times as clear. It is more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, it is remarkable.
It is much more massive. There's reasons for that. The bass coupling of the 2 separate cabinets makes a huge difference. But what you get is the clarity of the dry amp, especially at volume, remains punchy, forthright, etc., etc. The wet you can have much wetter. And if you had it that wet in one single amp, it would sound like mush.
It'd be too much.
You'd have it would be indistinct. Now, it gets a little bit complicated with overdrive, because if you are using the overdrive in the amp, then you probably would want those wet effects in the amp's loop. And that's cool, just to have them in the loop of one amp, not both. The other thing is worth mentioning, Dan and I tend not to do that. We would have 2 amps that were just on the edge of overdrive, or relatively more clean, and get the overdrive from pedals. much more headroom that way. The other thing to mention is all amplifiers' effects loops are not created equal, and the amount of signal loss you lose in 40 foot of cable and a few pedals on a so-so effects loop is maddeningly gigantic.
Indeed.
It is a fundamentally different sound. Now, you can get into buffers, having a buffer in your effects loop chain, but then, of course, that affects everything else that's going on in the amp. It's a massive compromise, which you might have found a solution to that really works, or you might just live with. Mesa's probably not a great example because the effects loop is excellent. But in my 2-Rock, for example, the classic reverb signature, that doesn't have a buffered effects loop. So I end up having to use a separate buffer into the front of the amp because when I do the wet, dry, wet thing and take the signal from the preamp and use the effects loop, it just kills the tone. So you need a buffer somewhere. That 2-Rock, the TS1, does have a buffered effects loop. Then, do you like the sound of the buffer in the effects loop?
Right.
And it's like, oh man, honestly, I'd rather just have a cleaner amp, bunch of pedals.
And straight in the front.
And straight in the front.
Sure.
But if you like the overdrive sound of your amp and you need that and it's a big part of your sound, then you get into all those compromises with loops and all that. So anyway, 2 amps sounds 3 times the size of 1 amp, and I'm not joking about that.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And anyone who's tried wet dry will concur, as long as you've got your phase right. James Bless says a couple of guest suggestions: Steve Lukather and Greg Koch. That would be a good show.
Far out, man. You've interviewed Luke, haven't you?
Only on the phone.
Okay.
Yeah, only on the phone. I have met him a couple of times, I think. At NAMM and
seems
stuff.
great.
Just a quick hello.
Right.
Yeah. Oh dear. Dan Harris, doesn't Andy Timmons do wet, dry, wet with monitors for the wet? Thought I saw that somewhere. Not currently. He does basically stereo.
Yeah.
2 Lone Stars into 1 Lone Star, out of the effects send of that into the wet effects, and then back out of the wet effects into the other amp.
Into the both power amp returns.
Yeah. So he's using the preamp of 1 amp to power the power sections of both.
That's it.
So it's the same preamp signal. Best place online to get hold of a humdinger, says Rob Wilson. Thegigrig.com.
Yeah. In stock now.
Yeah. Ship all over the world.
I do love this guitar. I shouldn't be so dismissive of it, but it's because you've got that ridiculous thing, and so as long as I don't hear that before I play this, I'm fine.
Dan likes my Les Paul because it's a bit brighter sounding.
Yeah.
And Dan likes bright things.
I do.
I'm sure if we got some 550s.
Yeah, right.
Let's do that. Let's get some 550s. It makes quite a difference, actually. Standard fitment for a 58 to 60 burst type Les Paul is 500k pots. There are people down the years who have realised or found that maybe some of those pots were closer to 550.
Right.
Or at least like the sound of a bigger pot. You don't want to go all the way to 1 meg because then it becomes a different thing. But 550s does make quite a difference, especially with 50s wiring.
Mm-hmm.
We should try it.
Sure.
I think you might re-fall in love with it.
Yeah, I mean, I do love this guitar. It's lovely.
Right. Yes, put 550s in, says BV.
Is there anyone that makes 550s?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I got some 280s for a couple of my Strats, actually.
Wow.
Similar deal. Yeah. Funnily enough, when I got my 335, one of the things that motivated me to get it was I was at Gibson Memphis when they were building the Rusty Anderson Signature 335, which was a 59 style. And Rusty had specified two things. One, he wanted the lightest centre blocks possible.
Wow.
So the guy that was showing us around there, Mike Volts, his name is, he was selecting all the light bits for the centre block. Secondly, 550k pots.
Wow.
Yeah, because it sounded that bit lighter. So there they were, trying to find pots that measured closer to 550.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, we shall finish this eve from Andrew Morris. Hello, Andrew. And Andrew says, hey guys, I just got my email from Analog Man to order my KOT after 5 years.
Wow.
King of tone, for those of you not au fait. I decided to go completely stock, thinking that I could put a preamp in front of it if I need more boost. Thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of really cranking the knobs on the KOT. On a lot of overdrive pedals, certainly in my experience anyway, I'm usually happy by about 2 o'clock. Anything past that tends to be a bit too much.
Yeah.
KOT's only just getting going at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And don't be worried about
Extreme settings.
Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And the stock thing for me is the way to go. KOT is not a heavy distortion pedal, and if there's, the distortion sounds on it do sound really good, but it's that mid gain overdrive thing that it just is super at. So yeah, the stock configuration is wonderful.
Henning Hesse says, Kloppman, he says Klockman, but I think you're talking about Andreas Kloppman, shows on a vlog how to dial in your pots with sandpaper and pencil graphite. Dan Drive was telling me about this.
Come on, amazing.
Actually, keep your eye on the TPS store for some interesting Dan Drive news coming soon. I'm not quite sure when, but very soon.
Awesome.
Yeah. James Bless says, thanks Mick, I'm now looking at a pair of Air Force Ones. Do the custom order. It's great. They're about 10 quid more expensive, and you can order them in whatever, a decent selection of colours. They take 2 weeks to get there.
Right.
Sizing information, I normally take a size up in any trainer, but Air Force Ones are true to size.
Okay.
So if I'm a size 10.5 UK, and the Air Force One's 10s fit me, and that never happens with trainers.
Amazing.
I'm usually up to flipping 12 with trainers.
Wow.
Yeah, Air Force One's come big. So anyway, go for it. They've got some good options.
Dwayne Jessom says, going to see Noel Gallagher next week in Toronto. Looking forward to it. Awesome. You'll love it, mate. He's live. He's so good.
Yeah. Yep. Good. Okay, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, BV, for moderalising.
Indeed.
Oh,
look at that thing, punctual.
Oh, wow.
Punctual boys.
BV has some contact with Mark Ford. Interesting. Yeah, we would be up for that, Mark, if he was up for it. I don't know how Mark is with press and doing stuff like that. But of course, anyone like that has an open invitation on TPS.
Yes.
Of course, and thank you. Right, sell all your shoes and buy the 345 mix, says Moon. Yeah, I know. Good, okay. Thanks, everyone. Friday's show was going to be a vlog. It's now not going to be. It's going to be boosts. 8 cool boosts, including the Jam Pedals Boomster, the DCX boost from Origin.
Nice.
The More from Monty's, and a bunch of other cool stuff that's got some interesting features that you could well enjoy.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. It's some really. I did the edit earlier. The sounds are
banging.
Really nice sounds, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah. Groovy. See you next week.
See you later, guys.